Well, we've just okay, good evening. Good evening, members. Welcome to this meeting of the Museum and Archive Committee, Wednesday the 3rd of June, 6:30 minutes. So, apologies for absences received.
Yes, we have Councillor Black, apologies, but we have Councillor Green standing in, and Councillor Anderson is also apologising.
Yeah, and did we have apologies from Councillor Morehouse?
He's just here.
Oh, sorry.
Wow.
No,
he didn't.
I must get Specsavers.
You can go home now, Mark, if you want.
Fantastic. Well done. Declaration.
So the answer to that is a no.
Declarations of interest. To receive any declarations of disposable pecuniary interest from members in respect of business to be transacted on the agenda. Do we have any tonight from anybody? If not, we'll move on. Here we are. Public participation. So we have a 20 minutes session set aside for members of the public to make representations. I believe we do have one. Don't we? Just one?
We do have just one, yes.
I'm going to stand for the applicants. Good evening. I'd like to address members on several points as follows. Firstly, I would like to thank the museum manager for her excellent report that asks several overdue questions and seeks strategic guidance. Secondly, on the subject of strategic direction, as some members will be aware, the museum and archives needn't be housed within the STBF, which may be a limiting factor in terms of future development. Prior to 2021, the Guildhall and the Museum and Archives were accounted for within STC accounts. In 2021, they were relocated to the STBF, perhaps because the STBF was persuaded to sell off a fixed asset, part of our car park to Sandwich Medical Practice, and the income from the sale was to be used to finance extensive Guildhall refurbishment without impacting STC accounts or the value of STBF investments. However, the STBF lost a fixed asset and the annual income it generated, but that was less visible in the published accounts. Perhaps it was also perceived to be more tax efficient to account for the Guildhall and the museum within a charity rather than the town council. However, it is not one of the purposes of the STBF to manage a museum function. Further, the financing of the museum and archives is unclear, given it has not been a fully budgeted cost centre, either within STC or STBF accounting. Thus, it has been impossible to see the full running costs of the museum and archives, or how much the STBF and STC, within its contribution towards the Guildhall, each pay towards the running costs of the museum and archives. I would like to suggest that at minimum, the museum and archives be made a fully budgeted cost centre, and that there be transparency with regard to how much STC and the STBF each contribute towards its running expenses. That said, I think we would be missing a trick if we didn't at least consider floating the Museum and Archives as a separate charity. The STC and the STBF may continue to support financially at the same level as at present by a grant awards, but which might then enable the Museum and Archives to attract grants from other sources that are otherwise out of reach due to it being sited within the STBF. The Museum and Archives might then be able to grow and flourish in whatever direction its trustees deem to be in its best interests, without limitations imposed by the Town Council and STBF. Thirdly, regarding the archive contents, the Sandwich Archives predate Sandwich Town Council, and as such hold archival records for the district rather than just the administrative parish of Sandwich. The borough of Sandwich played a greater role in local government, and Sandwich was a hub town in terms of local infrastructure. In many ways that is still the case, for example the catchment area of secondary schools and the GP practice. There is much history in the local area that extends beyond the confines of the parish of Sandwich. For example, Richborough Roman Fort, Port Richborough, the historical wrecks in Sandwich Bay, the fact that the poor of Sandwich were sent to the workhouse in Eastry, and that in the early Middle Ages, Eastry was a major administrative centre in the Kingdom of Kent, and several Saxon kings maintained a court and a royal palace in Eastry, including King Egbert, who is famously linked to the murder of the two young princes, and King Ethelbert, one of the most famous Anglo-Saxon monarchs. Therefore, I think it would be a mistake for the archives to dispose of materials that fall outside of the strict confines of the current administrative parish of Sandwich, as I have heard suggested. Instead, I believe a broader, richer offering is more likely to attract more visitors, both local and from further afield. With regard to the location of the archives, when the Undercroft was converted at some considerable cost, we were told it would enable the archives to be brought to an international archival standard, which should enable local archival records that had been sent to Kent archives for safekeeping, given the perilous state of the attic, to return to Sandwich. It was also stated that the public will regain access to the archives for research purposes, and that honorary archivists would stage exhibitions under the guidance of the museum manager. Many of the public still live in hope of those goals being achieved. And finally, speaking on behalf of Sandwich resident Diana Jones, if public access to the archives is to be via the attic room rather than in the Undercroft, as suggested in the previous meeting, what reasonable adjustments under the Equality Act will be made for disabled access to the archives? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christina. Most of that was commentary, and I know you've expressed those opinions before. More than happy if you want to give a written copy, and we'll circulate them with the minutes, and that will give context. I'm not sure some of that was completely accurate in terms of some of the conversations we had, but we will all have the opportunity to reflect on what you've said. So, for example, regards restricting access for people with disabilities is certainly not something that anyone in this room, I think, would even consider.
That's why we put it on the ground floor.
Yeah, but so we won't have a conversation about it, but I'll just assure you it's not something that will be factored in, and I'm certain the museum manager would always look at accessibility as part of any solution that we might move forward with. It'll go with minutes.
I did want to provide context because I was very much aware that many of the people in this room were not around at the time that some of those things happened, sort of 2021 and so forth, and may not know the flexibility that is possible.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to open thinking, sort of open the scope of thinking when you're looking at strategic direction. The specific question about disability access was one that was raised by the resident, and she asked me to ask it at
That's
the meeting.
completely fine, but
So,
I can't believe this group.
No, I wouldn't expect it to, but I was asked to raise the question, and so that's what I did.
Okay, thank you. So we've got the minutes of the previous meeting on the 28th of January. Anybody have any comments on those that they want to raise? And if not, we can go forward with them.
Happy to propose them.
Proposed and seconded, right? So, Councillor Ripley and Councillor Carter. I'll just sign these now then, if that's okay. Well, you can have a vote, so there'll be a vote.
Councillor Black has written to me saying he approves them.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. So action log, and what I was going to suggest, and I don't know if you've had time to actually look through the actions, there are a number of things on there that are to be reported on. So have you got a verbal update on these? And if not, I thought possibly not. So what I would suggest is, could you take a look at the actions between now and the next meeting? We can discuss them before the next meeting and see which are still relevant. There's one or two that are quite important. Roman Bowl is one, but it's very easy to say there's an action. Have you dealt with it? If you didn't really know about the action, then we'll have a conversation about it.
It was not highlighted for me as something that I need to prepare for this meeting.
Yeah.
So I think it's a strategy meeting. So for next
Yeah,
proper meeting.
that'll be fine.
Yeah, it's due to go away in November, so I thought there should be paperwork and money put aside to pay for the conservation work in
Yeah.
November.
So we'll have a conversation about
Okay.
that.
Oh yeah, sorry, I just wanted to raise, obviously, item number 7 has been completed. So
Yes, and
that could be taken off of the action log. That's the purchase of the,
So that's the need to go through, and there are a couple on there that are closed already, so
Yeah.
I think you just need to review, Natasha, we can have a conversation once you've had the chance to look at them. Okay? Yeah, no urgency to this minute. Thank you very much. So I'd like to propose that we accept the actions of this stand, recognising that they will be reviewed and reported on the next meeting. Councillor Rippon has seconded. Vote on those. Thank you very much, that's one abstention. Thank you. So, Natasha, welcome. Can I say first of all, fantastic, you've only been here a few months. There's a little bit of an avalanche of stuff, not least a temporary exhibition, not least trying to work out some of the processes and things left behind. So I'd like to commend what you've done so far, and thank you very much for it. But obviously this is your opportunity to give us a detailed report on how things are going and things you want to raise.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to see you all. It's the first time I'm doing the committee meeting, so apologies if I'm not doing it right. But I hope tried to write as full and complete reports as possible for you all to see before the meeting, and to read through and to think about the questions I'd like to discuss with you, not only today, but also next meeting as well. Because these are the issues that have been accumulating for quite a while, and so the purpose of this meeting, as far as I am aware of, is to highlight the problems the museum has at the moment, and also to think about where we are standing and what our goal is, what the museum actually is, what do we want from it. Because obviously I've been here 2 months and 12 days exactly, so it's not enough time to you know the museum much better than I do in many ways, and the archive, yeah. But so I'll start with an update about achievements and challenges since my appointment. Not going to read the whole report.
No, that's what I was going to say, you don't need to, because it's incumbent on us to read the report, and an opportunity for you to give the highlights, and then you can comment.
Yes. So I focused on a number of practical issues that were in the museum. Obviously, when I came to the museum, what I saw is the museum that had broken screens and a few things were not working, and the museum didn't look well for, was not ready for the summer season. Also, the volunteers were without a manager for a number of months, and they were losing the idea of what they're doing and why they're there, and they're doing such hard work as well. So it was very important to get them all together and motivate them. With the help of the town council team, we were able to repair and replace a few pieces of broken equipment. We carried out some basic maintenance and painting works, so the museum does look much better at the moment, and I believe it is ready for the summer season. But of course, there are quite a few issues that still remain, because, of course, as we know, museum budget is quite modest and relies heavily on donations and shop income, as well as grant funding, which we are able to get thanks to accreditation. But of course, the museum shop looks not ideal. It's very small, and it doesn't really look like a shop. So I think it's very important for us to think about how we can actually improve that area, how we can make it more exciting for visitors, and get more income from selling local history books as well as souvenirs and other items. So another point is improving donations infrastructure. Volunteers are doing an amazing job. They are giving tours, and basically they're earning money for the museum, for our budget. But we can do better. And how we can do better is provide resources for the visitors to pay easily without thinking too much. And there are examples in Sandwich where contactless donation system has been used, and for instance St. Clement's Church and St. Mary's Church, and they both, I spoke to both representatives of those institutions, and they said that the donations increased dramatically. So I'm not quite sure that we have enough budget for that. I researched all different options, and there are quite inexpensive ways to do it, but still they're quite expensive for us. So we probably need support from the Torbridge Fund. And something for us to discuss. Now, the museum entrance and external visibility has raised concerns for quite a long time. So everyone is aware of the fact that with the massive door we have at entrance, people cannot see the museum easily unless they've read about the museum before, or they happen to notice the small sign at the front, the museum is open, they come to the museum. But we have to think how we can just say that we're there, to people who come to our town. The Hive temporary exhibition space requires refurbishments and repainting, and this is something for us to discuss. If we want temporary exhibitions, and I believe we do, we want at least 3 temporary exhibitions a year, and we're fully able to do it because we have an amazing collection, great materials. I'm happy to do all the research and preparation work and installation of the exhibitions, but the small space at the back of the courtroom is not ready for this. So it needs to be redecorated. Yes. Then audience engagement. It also has been a concern for, I think my predecessor has highlighted it as well, that we need a better audience engagement, particularly targeting children, teenagers and families. This is also goes through my later report about the museum and its purpose. But if we want a museum that serves not just the tourists but the local community, we have to think about that, about the families, and offer something to children and families. We do have something at the moment. We have a clothes rack, we have some colouring sheets, but in the modern world, it's hardly enough, because there are other ways to engage with the children. And I propose a few things: a child-friendly museum tour of the rat character, and this also has been done by my predecessor with collaboration of a local graphic designer, and I hope to continue this project, and also offer QR code-based engagement as well. I've been talking to a local theatre group, and they're happy to assist with that. We want to create talking objects, so the objects in our museum can actually talk for themselves and tell their story when you scan the QR codes. And it's going to be entertaining, fun, but very informative as well, and offer something that is not text-based and doesn't require engagement with the volunteers. Not everybody likes that kind of thing. So what we have is longer-term operational conservation concerns as well, and I believe that relates to the discussion about the Roman Ball and Magna Carta. So we hold unused conservation support hours. We have them through the National Conservation Society, but if it's 10.5 hours that could have been accumulated over the past year or two, so it will be important over the coming year to review environmental monitoring, temperature conditions, storage, conservation requirements, condition of paintings and portrait collections, especially working on this exhibition of the metal portraits. I discovered that several of them have chipping paint and they need to be looked at. Otherwise we're going to lose a few of them very soon. I actually consulted with my friend who is works for conservation agency. She said that we need urgent, at least temporary treatment for some of the paintings, because this deteriorating process in the initial stages can be quite rapid, yeah. So we need to stabilize them and then think about proper conservation treatment and if we are able to afford it. Digital presence, yes. The museum's digital presence requires some form of redevelopment. I need to get access to our Facebook account, which has been troublesome because it was managed by a different IT provider in the past, and they had a password, and we don't have it anymore. So I believe rebuilding Facebook, Instagram, and being present online is important, again, for younger audiences and also for the tourists because they want information. And also, my predecessor has, she worked on creating a new version of the website. This is also something that we need to look into. I reviewed several ongoing external partnership projects with Canterbury Christchurch University, digital drama and time walk projects. So we are working on them at the moment. Digital drama is a short project. I believe you already know about this, yeah, it's been discussed at previous meetings. So it will finish in October. But generally, I do think at the moment we don't really have capacity, working capacity to partner with somebody and do short-term projects. What we need to do, we need to sort out our very important issues in the museum and the archives, and make them functional, make them work, and transfer the material from the attic to the undercroft, complete that work. That's very important. And then we can focus on partnerships and projects and all the pleasant and lovely things after we do the hard work. So, a few points that strategic questions that we need to focus on is defining the museum's long-term purpose and audience, clarifying the role of the archive or the archives, how they are known, determining the future priorities for collections, access and research, thinking about visitor engagement, community engagement, conservation, operational capacity, and aligning future budgets more closely with practical operational needs. At the moment, I'm dealing with a budget that I have not created. I came here when the budget has already been created, and it's not easy because obviously we don't have enough money for repairs for some other things.
Yeah.
So that's it for now.
Thank you. So a number of these pointers are picked up when we get into strategy discussion. So I wouldn't necessarily want to pull those out from those subsequent items. So for example, community engagement, there's a discussion we're going to have on that, archive strategy, and then also priorities. But recognising that, as you've got pad papers, are there any particular points you want to make? The only thing I was going to say was it's a very detailed report, and thank you. And it's important to see warts and all, and understand the challenges. And until you know the problems, you can't really find a solution. So I think it's a good starting point. And then discussions that we might need to have around funding, etc. We can have those in due course. But the right thing is not to dive in and say, I want this amount of money to fix the problems that need to be fixed. I think we do it in chunks, and the first thing is understanding the challenge. So that's helpful. Thank you. Any points?
Yeah, I was just going to say, involvement in the local community. Do you think we should do an information pack to go out to the schools? The village
It's
primary.
possible, yeah, there are lots of ideas that could.
Because I know when I was mayor, I used to go to the scout book and wear my regalia. HB scouts and different scouts.
That would be
To
great.
get them to come in.
Well, the important thing to remember is that the work with the community is a work in progress
Yeah.
always.
Yeah.
So they're always like, new children are born, go to school, you have to constantly work with the schools. And it's not like we contact them once or they go there once.
No.
It has to be written into a schedule, some sort of plan, how we actually engage with the community. And this is one way to do it, and it's a great way to do it. So,
And it's like some of the art of it. I mean, I hate these paintings really, because we always used to have the mayors up there, and they only took them down because all the forecourt work was going on.
Yeah.
So could we have a rotation of paintings?
it's not related to the to the schools.
No,
but
but
it's
it's just something to be used up.
yes, of course. The thing is that I came here 2 months ago, and obviously I
Yeah.
have like this fresh
Yes.
sort of.
Yes.
And I don't see a problem why we cannot use our wonderful collection and all
Yeah.
paintings. But you know, I will tell you what the problem is after 2 months here, is that I physically cannot unscrew them from the walls. I need support, I need help.
Yeah.
I need people to be present,
Yeah.
because I'm the only person who, you know, has a paint position in the museum, and the volunteers who are often quite elderly and cannot really lift heavy
Yeah.
things or carry them around.
Okay, so let's
Oh.
remember the
Oh.
main point tonight is to talk about strategy. Let's be careful we don't get too much in the weeds, but I would say that having had the mayor's paintings and photographs out last night, it's an impressive collection, and we need to look at, not today, in a few months' time, is how do we reintroduce them into the building. The space here, place that, but that's for tomorrow, not for today, so thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say we're talking to the report, so community engagement comes in item number 9.
I've said that.
So could we just, I'd like to propose that we note the report at this stage. It makes a very good benchmark for going forward, so I'm happy to note the report.
It's seconded.
It's a very thorough report, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very good.
Yes, thank you. Moving on. The next item is the archive strategy. So this is to discuss a plan to progress the archive transferring from the attic to the undercroft. I'm not expecting tonight that we're going to come up with definitive solution, should we say. So again, this is about the journey. So you've recognised the problem and you've highlighted it. So do you want to introduce some ideas of what you've
I'm talking about the museum strategy.
no, the archive strategy.
It's a trouble.
And then
Should we talk about the museum strategy first?
well,
Before we tick it, we haven't discussed
this
it.
report just raises some questions for you all to discuss. Yeah, these are my questions to you.
Yeah.
Because you are committee members who've been, you know, discussing this all and observed the developments and struggles of the museum in the past. So I invite you all to think about the role of the museum and archives, how we see the museum in the future. What do we want? What do we want? A tourist attraction? Do we want something more community-based where people can engage with and come and help and, you know, just a community hub really in many ways. We want a mix of this, like, the thing is that I just realized that, for instance, my job requires me doing things in different directions simultaneously, and it's very difficult for me to prioritize certain things over other things. I have my vision of what I should do, and I try to give an idea of it. But what is your vision? What do you want to see as a museum in Housebound?
As regards to the archives.
Right, we are not there yet.
No, we're not there.
Yes.
No.
Oh, well, on the museum.
Yes.
What about text in foreign languages? I suppose audio guides wouldn't be practical for the Sandwich Museum. There might be leaflets or something.
With the audio guides, I will tell you one thing: the world is not the same after COVID. People don't want to pick up the equipment to work with audio guides from somebody else. Things are now more content. So QR codes, I would say, is a way forward because people can use their own phones and scan QR codes, and you know.
But could they get a text in, say, French?
That's possible. That's what we discussed this when we thought about the talking objects. You know, what I wanted as President Roman had. You know, you scan a QR code and it tells you a story. You know, like I'm Barack Obama, and you know, all these things, how it was found, and you know, very informative. But we can also add another QR code that takes you to the French version of the same thing. So that's possible. But we're going to do all the languages at once, probably.
You could actually, from the QR code, you could QR code to take you into the English one, and then you could have a drop down and choose
That's
from,
possible as
say,
well.
5 European languages or Japanese, whatever the most popular 5 are. So, but you'd only need one QR code to take you through, and then have the drop down, and it gives you all different languages.
Yes, I think that's possible. But also we have in the museum the printouts, in different languages. It's just like they're quite lengthy and quite comprehensive. So I thought creating just one laminated sheet in each language, like with at least brief information, so people, it's more user friendly. People sometimes get scared when they have a lot of text in front of them, so they could just read through and then ask questions.
So we could just take a step above, because this is really about strategy, and what we're looking for is a discussion on the purpose of the museum, not about the trinkets that we have in place. It's important that we help Natasha in terms of.
I can ask the question. So the question, I've finished my report with some questions. So what should be the primary purpose of the museum in the town today, and how should its multiple roles be balanced in practice?
Yes.
One of the areas that I personally would like to see, and I think this is reflected in many areas of the town, is the ability to access remotely information about what is in the archive, the catalogue. So talking about just the online catalogue, and the ability to not necessarily come into the museum or upstairs or wherever, because I think there is a clear issue over physical access, because if somebody comes in and wants to, let's say, have a level access into the undercroft, it's not really appropriate, neither is it not there. But to be able to access it online, I think that is something, but that is another area, is generating that list, the images, which I think we'll be covering elsewhere.
Well, this is about online presence, so being present online, or have a website that is informative and also have some catalogue attached to our website, so that people can know what the museum has and what the archive has as well.
Thank you. Not talking about the archive, but talking about the museum. I would suggest one very good thing to do would be to go and, well, I'd suggest all the councillors do it actually, but go up to, we've got what's called a limb. So it's another town that's linked to Sandwich, it's called Brightening Sea in Essex, and they've got a really fantastic museum that was fully funded, and it's much more interactive, and it portrays a lot more. Brightening Sea is still a very busy port, and it has lots of ships, it has a yacht club, a sailing club, etc, etc. And the museum there, I would say, is first class. They even had Princess Anne came to see their museum recently, so I would suggest a visit there, but to encompass more of what is key to the place that the museum is. So with Brightening Sea, it's the port and sailing, and for Sandwich there would be other key criteria that we need to do, but I think the strategy should be to expand on what we've got, because currently it's all rather static, you've got the glass cases to view things, but if you go up to Brightening Sea, it will say, they used to make rope there, and there's some rope that you can see, different types of rope that's been made. So, but I would just like to point that out. That might assist with going forward.
Well, this is exactly one of the issues that I tried to highlight in one of the reports, about the changes that happened over time in our museum. So as far as I understand, before the renovation, the museum had much more interactive content, things that you can actually touch. And this is very interesting that it all changed to something like this behind the glass. I mean, I personally think it was a trend about 10 years ago when local museums wanted to look like, I don't know, like very sleek and minimalist, with sort of like not irritating interiors. It's great, but then it also creates a much colder look. So something behind the glass. It doesn't address it doesn't think about children. Why children love the rat? Why do they love the rat? Every time I clean the fingerprints, there is a rows of fingerprints around the rat, because they just glued it, because this is the only thing that reminds them of like something interesting, like the world that is kind of real life, texture and all these things. So, and not just children are like this. You know, when we brought the torpedo back to the display, people come and they're not supposed to do that, but they do touch it. You know why they do it? Just because you need to. Yeah, you have sensory needs, you need to be satisfied, either your child or an adult. You want some this sort of, and because we're limited in space, we have to think how we do it. There are ways to do it for children, sensory bags, and they're not very difficult. These sensory bags, there's usually kits with little objects, like something furry, cold stone. So you walk around telling about the display, but they can actually touch something, while hearing the tour. Yeah.
Just on behalf of Councillor Black, in response to the kind of strategic questions that you're asking, whether the museum should continue to be visitor-led or whether it should be more of a civic resource, his response is that he suggests that the local engagement is secondary, as too much resource is needed for that aspect. And
local engagement is secondary.
Is secondary to the visitor-led. And from if I may comment, your first report showed how much there is to do, and when you ask these strategic questions, it's very evident that there's a lot to do. But unfortunately, I don't think we've really got a lot of space for everything that you want to do, and we haven't got a lot of money either. And it's balancing those things which are really going to be the challenge.
My goal was not to overwhelm you with the number of tasks and challenges. It was just many of these things are actually possible to implement or fix. And we are working on this because with just 2 months we fixed so many issues with the museum, and we managed to install 2 exhibitions. Yes, so that was these things are doable even within my schedule. I'm the only person who does it, so I have to juggle lots of things at once. But this is where I'm turning to you as my help, my support. I want you to help me to see my priorities better. What do you want me to do? What kind of museum do you want? Do you want a place where all local children after school will come with their families to do some activities, to explore it? I thought, in the winter we could do like a guided tour with torches or something like this. We can do things like this, but it's my time, so I can focus on that. I can focus on, older audience, offering kind of more research-based exhibitions, based on our collection. Or what I can do is sort out the archives for the future, generations. So if and when I'm replaced by the next manager at some point, that person will, have a better situation with the museum.
So I disagree with that last councillor's remark, because I think the museum and the Guildhall is crucial to the economy of the town. It's the most complete meeting town in England, isn't it? And the amount we had a coach come in the other day from Belgium. They come to the town to look at the historic parts of the town. So I think the museum and the Guildhall is so crucial. I mean, we're seeing shops closing right, left and centre. So I think the museum and the Guildhall is such a draw for people to come to visit Sandwich.
I agree, it's great to have a museum in town. It's great to have a cinema in town. These things that
It's
actually
amazing,
make
isn't it?
town what it is.
Yes, sorry, just for clarification, I don't disagree with what you're saying.
No,
I don't believe I said anything contrary to that, Councillor Frank.
It was secondary. Secondary was local. It was more about outward facing.
And just keeping to the strategy as much as possible, it's the ability for you to be able to manage others with the delegation, because we're talking about many, many different things, of which there will be volunteers who might sort of say, that's something that I'm particularly interested in, and you can say, you get on with it, and have that ability and that facility to be able to do that. I don't know quite how at the moment, but to include that in that strategy.
John Scott.
Can I just make a comment as well? I mean, I think what you're saying is very impressive, obviously, and you're asking people to tell you the direction we should be going in. But one of the things you highlighted quite early on is that you can create a mechanism for people to actually donate a lot more,
Mhm.
that will create perhaps an ability to fund some of the opportunities to go forward. And then almost the archiving can become a separate thing, but it still has to be done. But the museum itself will generate more in what it's doing, and therefore there may be some scope for resource to support the other areas going
Absolutely.
forward.
You
Which is,
see, the archive is such a complex issue that it requires
We're coming on to
a
that
third
separately.
report.
Yeah, let's
you
talk
know,
about
it's a
that again.
separate, but
Yeah.
because it's a really complex thing,
Yeah.
and it will take, if I focus on the archives at the moment, it will take my time
Yes,
almost immediately, you know, so I will not have time to do anything, and possibly, because a single archival box is of £15 or something, so, you know, we need over 200 of them, so it will, you know, it will eat the budget and my time.
Yeah.
It's complex if we focus on that, and
So-
we don't need that, we want the museum to operate as a.
Yeah. We'll come on to that in a minute. So we've done one round, so I'll have an opportunity now. So Brian, you can see a number of us have been there. So we have experienced the museum, so we know exactly what it's like. I know Councillor Ripley's been there as well. What I would say is it's a population double the size of Sandwich, number one. Secondly, it had a significant legacy in terms of investment. So they were very lucky, and it's also much newer than our establishment. So in many respects, they are where we probably want to be, but funding will be an issue. So that's just bright to see. But in terms of strategy and what you're looking for, I think it is a hub for visitors to the town. So we have to improve how it is promoted, how it's viewed, and also the value of what it gives. So that's definitely one aspect. But I think also within that, we'll come on to engagement, right? So I won't go into this too much, because you've already mentioned one aspect, but I think we need greater engagement with the schools. So what I know is from my interactions over the last couple of years, the schools are doing lots of projects. The junior school is a really good example. We're doing another one with a Turner Contemporary Museum Art Centre, whatever it's called. Turner Contemporary is what it's called. So they've got a very, and they're not the only ones, the tech schools as well are very focused on arts, history. The 800 years mayors generated a lot of ideas. So I think we have to somehow find a museum as being integral to what they're doing. At the moment it's not linked up. So we need to think about how do we do that, but we'll get on to engagement shortly.
Is it just not persistent?
Yeah.
It just needs to be consistent. There should be some consistency in the way
Exactly.
we deal with
And you mentioned one thing which I was going to say about the after school clubs, but I've got 3 or 4 other things as well, so
Yes.
let's not get into that yet.
Just one last
yeah.
thing. The thing is that the schools, they plan their curriculum a year in advance. So we have to be one step ahead and to think what's going to happen next year. So that's very important. Otherwise, not going to engage.
Yeah, if we made the museum, and I've heard it said by people outside this room, it's for the town, we pay for it, you know, it's for us. Actually, we've only got 4,500 residents, of which only a small slice will be interested in museums. Now you might be able to increase that a bit, but it's not enough. We get a lot of tourists in the town, and that is a very clear aspect of what the museum should be for, because a lot of them are coming here for history. They're not coming here to, apart from when there's festivals on, for any other real reasons. So we need to facilitate and encourage that. So I think, back to the point Councillor Green says, I think locals are important, but they are secondary.
Well, I disagree with that personally. You know why? Because I see the demographics of Sandwich is changing. We have to see, to look at it as well. Because yes, it is getting younger. We have more and more young families moving to this area, bringing children. I can see it because I have my son in the local school, and the past couple of years, more and more young families moved to Sandwich. Yes, and they really wanted. Many of them moved from London, where they had museums on their doorstep and everything, and they want to engage with the local museums. And they might not have time right now because they're busy paying their mortgages and working and doing school runs. But in a few years' time, they'll be here. They'll be the people who will want to get involved, and so we have to have something on offer as well.
I know the next 10 years we've probably got an extra 1,000 people living at Discovery Park. So Yes, you're
And
right.
it's a dead museum. The museum is just only like, it's used for like tourists and that's it, selling magnets for the fridge and that's it.
exactly
We want
not.
to engage
Yeah.
with people and educate children, you know. They will be those who will be proud of their heritage and they'll carry
Yeah.
on, you know, this
That was the
information
point I
passing
made
to
about
them.
linking the schools more.
Of
My final
course.
point was about being more interactive.
Mhm.
So without getting into the detail, the museum needs to be more attractive. It needs to be more welcoming, more open things you can do in there rather than just look at stuff.
Mhm.
It's very static. So they're my points. Sorry, Councillor Carr first and Councillor.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I just wanted to make 2 points. The first point is Brightling Sea did get a legacy for their museum, but so did Sandwich. Sandwich got a very large legacy recently, and we're sitting on a very nice pot of gold. So we've got a legacy. If we wanted to do something, we've got the money there to do it.
Not from Maddox, sorry, Councillor Carter. We shouldn't point towards Maddox.
It is a legacy to the town council for the use, the benefit of the town.
No,
It is
No,
to the
It's
benefit
not.
of the town.
It's not. You have to be
for
very
the
careful.
organisations
Yeah.
of the town.
Yeah, organisations.
It's well, that's
That's
debatable.
what,
Anyway,
that's what the will explicitly says, Councillor.
we've had and we've got the Sandwich Tollbridge Fund as well, and it's a shame we're sitting on so much money, you know, £5 million in money, and we can't expand it. Anyway, that's by the by. The other thing I wanted to point out, I'm a school governor for one of the largest schools here. We've got just under 1,500 pupils, and there's literally just over 2,000 pupils within the 4 schools here. So looking at figures and numbers, I think we should, for the primary purpose should be education. And I'm not saying education for children, I'm saying education for everybody from 1-year-old to 91-year-old. It should be across the board, but it should be an education to show people what has happened here in the past and community life as well. So I think that's important too. And also the other thing is your predecessor used to bring us the statistics of the people that had visited the museum, and we do have a large number of visitors, but it was very noticeable that the residents in the town, when they were questioned in a survey, they said, I've never been to the museum. So as Councillor Chuka just said, we've got 4,500 people living in this town, and you know, probably about 80% of them haven't actually attended the museum. So just there, we've got 6,000, over 6,000 people as a target audience, and we're not doing anything about it
I
currently.
agree, it's not the fault of the people that they haven't been to the museum. It's our fault that we don't have
Exactly.
anything to offer them.
We should be encouraging them.
I mean, for instance, the exhibition of the portraits of mayors created by the students of the junior school, they attracted some interest. The children and their families came to see the exhibition, they were very interested in that, and I prepared activity sheets for them, and you know, they engaged somehow with the exhibition, and many of them were surprised that there was something there
Yes.
to see and to do in the museum. They're not used to it at all.
No.
Let's change that.
And there are ways in which you can look at how you get that message out. So we can go on to that, Councillor.
To encourage local interest in the museum, there are 2 art societies which
Yes.
meet monthly in Sandwich in the Guildhall, and there could be, say, an annual lecture promoted by each of the 2 societies relating to the museum. For example, there could be a lecture on Magna Carta, or
Plus the History Society.
yes, but
We have
and the
lectures.
History Society as well. Yes.
Yeah, this is definitely a great idea, but I'm just thinking about the format of a lecture. Who is it attractive to? You know, who comes to lecture? To
Well,
the members of those societies.
And I guess, yes.
Yeah, so how to reach out to, you know, to the other audiences, younger audiences. People are, you know, sometimes afraid to become part of the circle. You know?
I'm just mindful.
Yeah, but
Mindful. We've got 2 other
yes, of course.
chunky things as well.
Very, very briefly, all I was going to say was that I think the important thing is to target both areas, the tourists and the locals, because I don't think the museum can operate properly unless it targets both. It's not just for one or the other, it's for both, I think.
Yeah, the question is the balance. Yeah, we need to think about
Yeah.
how we balance them. Yeah.
So Natasha, is there anything else you need? Because you've heard some views, whether it's enough to start the thinking process for you.
Well, as far as I understand, I mean, that was quite surprising that Councillor Black saw the community engagement as a secondary thing.
Yeah, you're in Reading.
But I do understand it, because obviously, you know, we rely on tourists and their visits, and we want to present Sandwich as this wonderful place with great history, and promote people to come here, to bring their families, to spend money in town. It's very important. At the same time, let's not forget, museums are not just for that.
No.
They're not businesses only. They are a bit, but also, you know, we rely on people. They will be our future volunteers. Yes, you know, the children at schools today, they will take over. And they will continue this. So it's very important to create this interest, not just to kind of, you know, to target the audience that is over a certain age. Yeah, younger people are important. Yeah, and the local people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, moving on, before that was difficult, the archive strategy.
Now, the archive is a difficult question, isn't it? It's a problem, and it's been a problem for quite a while. Yeah. So when I started, I wasn't fully aware of the scale of this problem, because I knew there was some sort of archival transfer project, and it's a large organizational task involving sorting, relocating material. But how much did I know? I didn't know that it's far more complex combination of operational, historical, strategic challenges, and also the challenges of building and fire safety involved. And it has a long history. So I spent these 2 months researching the history of the archive. And an interesting thing that I noticed is that it's a previous report, but still it relates to this one, is that in 2023, you all were here for the committee meeting that approved a different mission for the museum, and which quite, you know, in mildly shifted focus from archival research and access to the archive to more general things, to kind of, you know, engagement with the audience in the wider sense, but eliminated the line to carry out and facilitate research to better understand their collections completely from the museum mission statement. So, and what we have at the moment is the word archive that is used, you know, in conversation quite frequently within the local community, is now almost eliminated from the documents. It's a museum collection now. A museum collection and archives are completely different things, yeah? So museum collection is not supposed to be researched by others, but the museum staff, really, you know? So it exists as a storage that is used, basically the objects are used to enrich the displays, temporary exhibitions, you know, for internal operations within the museum. Whereas archives, they supposed to be used, researched, and people want access. That's why I created this confusion, because people don't understand the archives, but where are they? What's going on? Why don't we have access? Why don't we use them? And it was very different 6 years ago. And for the past 6 years ago, because of fire safety, because of the very important move of the collections from the attic that is not museum safe to the new storage, the priorities have shifted and changed. But the frustration in town is still there, right? And we want to address that and think how we can actually claim back the, you know, the archives as they are, yes? So how we can offer better resources for researchers. Because, you know, the archives in a small town like Sandwich, we are still a small town, yes, but with very important history. should be used by the local people. They need to come research the things about their property, you know, about their families, etc., etc. Write books, local history books. You know, what's the point of having an archive, you know, the big collection that, and it's very much so a paper collection, isn't it?
Very
Yeah.
much so.
So documents and paper that it can be really used for exhibition, for the displays. Yes, so 3D objects, yes, but not really all the papers and, you know, registers and correspondence and things like that. So it's important to understand where we're standing with the archive. Do we want an archive, or do we want to keep it as museum collections? At the moment, the Undercroft is designed to, you know, not for the archives, but for museum, to hold the museum collections, because there is no research space. If somebody comes to do research, unfortunately, I have to say to that person that please send me an email. If I have time, I'll try to look into the collections and help you, but etc., etc. So yeah, it raises a number of questions. Yeah.
Jeff first.
The idea of the archive was that the public wouldn't be allowed in there, but they'd ask a question and the relevant document would be fetched out to them so they could sit in a quiet room with the document, and then the archivist or the could just put them back in the correct space. So that was the idea, that the
Well, that's how most archives
so the public wouldn't be sitting in there, they'd be sitting in another little room.
It's true, but then the Undercroft doesn't have an adjacent room that can be used for a researcher. It absolutely doesn't. It has space for 3.
No, it wasn't their idea to use the Undercroft at all. The researchers weren't to go in the archive,
Right.
only the archivist knew which to go in the archive.
But the room has to be here or somewhere.
Well,
so I have to go.
the other little room's downstairs.
Well, how do researchers do it at the moment? We don't have a catalogue, we don't have really a developed collections management system, and record of our, you know.
Well, it's so important moving from up here
Exactly.
down there. That's what the concentration has been on.
A large
Actually.
part of it is upstairs, and at the moment the attic presents a challenge because it's a mix of broken furniture, materials that are just basically rubbish, museum collections, previous exhibition materials, you know, all sorts of things. So we need to, it's very important that we sort out the attic. I really understand that. But then when we finish this, and I do have a plan, I try to outline what I suggest with, you know, moving the materials as soon as possible to the Undercroft, and then developing a few teams of volunteers who will work on putting them onto a collections management system, which is also in itself a problem. Collections management system, and then I want us to focus on it a bit later. But
I think a lot of that stuff could stay up there, though, couldn't it? A lot of them old books and that, they could just stay up there. Because I don't think you'd have room in the Undercraft with all of that
technically
stuff.
we can't, because we have accreditation. You know, we applied for accreditation. We made certain promises, and we have to stick to them. We cannot say, okay, what are we basing our decisions on? You know, we're leaving these materials there, but we're saving other materials. What's going to happen to the old books?
Well, I'm talking about all the yellow pages and all that
yellow
stuff.
pages, it's
I mean, there is stuff that's
I mean, it's a big question. How do we treat them? Are they part of? I don't think they're accessioned. The yellow page. They are not museum part of museum. They are reference materials. And reference materials we can dispose of if they are not relevant anymore. If they have accession number, obviously they have to be part of the collection. It's the same issue with the town council material. You know, what do we treat as museum collection in terms of town council minutes and all these things? Are minutes from 2010 museum item or not? And what about town council documents from 1940?
Well, they
So
wouldn't be
there's a
unless
big
they've been,
difference, isn't it?
unless they've been accepted into the collection. They wouldn't be.
Yes.
Would they? And then the question is whether the council, if they're not part of the collection, whether the council wants to preserve them for any reason.
Yes.
But that is the council's issue, not the museum manager's
But at the
issue.
moment they're all
I
together.
know.
There, so separating them is important.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You've done some very good research, because in this paragraph here, historically, the archive, paragraph 4 on this first page, you're 100% right. About 6 years ago, we had a very thriving archive upstairs with a large number of volunteers, and 2 or 3 of them had PhDs in history and archaeology and things like that, who were maintaining the archive and doing a good job. We even had people from the archives in Maidstone who were referencing our archives here. So Kent County Council's archives were approaching us and saying, have you got this information, because we don't hold it. And the Sandwich archives have always been seen as one of the best preserved archives in Kent. And that worked really well with the volunteers. But about 6 years ago, we had this change around. We were told, we were given recommendations by predecessors of yours to move the archives down to the Undercroft. So, and then after that, although the volunteers were still present, we were then told that there was fire safety issues.
I'm fully aware of all this.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is you had a very, very good model previously of what we should be getting back to.
We cannot get back to things. It's impossible. That's all. I have to say this.
I
It's
beg to
impossible
differ
to
on
go
that
back.
point.
I mean, we don't have a time machine. We cannot move back 6 years ago. What we need to do, we have to think about the future and how we do it. We don't recreate the model from the past. So think about the existing circumstances we have, and new storage is great. It's not. It might not be enough for everything, and this is another issue. We need to think about that. But at the moment, it's not completely filled with documents. We still have things to rescue. And then how do we build on this? Like, how do we use the new storage to open it up to researchers? But unfortunately, that wonderful system that existed 6 years ago is destroyed. It's gone.
Well, I just wanted to finish. Sorry, very, very briefly, 30 seconds. Is I chair up the History Society, and we used to get, and we still do get, hundreds of research questions come into our website every year, literally hundreds, and we just say, we're sorry, the archives in Sandwich are closed, we can't help you. There's a large number of volunteers, both from the History Society and in this town, that would be willing to come back and assist with whatever new mechanism you put in place. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Yeah, can't remember what I was going to say now. It's such a long time ago. It's starting to remember. Oh, I know. Yeah. Well, when my husband and I first moved to the town, we asked if we could go into the archives, which were upstairs at that stage, to look for details of if we could find anything about our property on there. And I'm not saying that everything was bad by any stretch of the imagination, but it wasn't perfect. It was not perfect. We were sent up there on our own. We were up there for 2 or 3 hours looking through anything. We could have done anything up there. We could have destroyed stuff, we could have pocketed stuff. It wasn't a perfect
secure
system.
Yeah.
It wasn't secure.
That was a big issue. Yes.
Yeah, and I'd like to echo that, because I had a request myself for some archive material.
This is a very important issue, safety.
I think it's very difficult for people to sit here and say it was always brilliant years ago, because actually it wasn't. And the archiving activity that's happening at the moment, having done it for a year, you've done it for 3 years now, exposes.
What was brilliant 6 years ago is the commitment of people who
the
would
individuals
go.
were willing to. Yes.
This is great, and these are, this is precious.
Yes,
right?
it is.
That generation contributed a lot to researching the collections. Unfortunately, we don't have replacement for that. Nobody in this town, people who are, my generation, nobody's involved, and they have no idea. And at the moment, the situation of half the collection there, half here, no order, no online. So I come back to the collections management system, possibly an online catalogue that will offer an opportunity to find information quicker, even if you're not physically present in there.
Yeah, and I think that's my point. It wasn't necessarily about any lack of commitment, it was probably oversubscribed with commitment. And actually, for whatever reason, it wasn't run in a manner that actually supported accreditation. A lot of what's happening now is trying to make us compliant with accreditation on a promise that we've made of activity that we'll do. And it's clear that it's not a simple exercise. No. Councillor Green.
just on behalf of Councillor Black, in terms of the demand for archive access, I think he's saying he's sceptical about the real demand for archive access outside a very small number of people. So I think some of these things need to be quantified so that the right decisions can be made. How many people ask for it, how much space is needed for it, and in terms of the materials and so forth that's in the space, he's saying he was actually competent to decide which categories are kept and so forth. So what is the process for actually deciding what to retain, what to exhibit, what to put where?
That's a good point, because we've actually got a lot of the material in Maidstone. So actually we haven't got the full archives here in any case.
And if we don't progress with moving the collections from upstairs there, we're going to lose what we have.
It was lost for 80
You
years.
know, there's any,
Maidstone.
maintaining
Yeah, no, we
accreditation means keeping up, you know, the standards, how we preserve the collection, how we look after the collections. If we lose this, if we, you know, we don't provide security for the collections as well, you know, what's going to happen? And if anybody can access it without any sort of like regulation, what's going to happen? They will take the accreditation back, and we can lose our materials to waste.
And finally, he says he agrees entirely with the view that the next phase of the project would benefit from a more practical and phased approach in which larger volumes of suitable material are first transferred into secure shelving.
I agree with that. Saving the materials from the attic to the attic loft is very important.
So quickly, Simon.
Oh no, I've just been scratching
Okay.
my head. Lots to say about the catalogue.
Yeah, we'll take a
It's
final,
not appropriate now.
final comment.
Well, I was just going to
from,
reinforce the point about having a catalogue on the internet.
Yes, I think we're going to come to
This
it.
is
Demand can be created,
Yeah.
and if people anywhere in the world with access to the internet can discover what's available.
Absolutely. Now, we're coming to this very important discussion about modes.
And the other thing, obviously, is search room, which is supervised. And also researchers now often come armed with laptops, so you have to have the correct plugs and so on, so that people can use their laptops in the search room.
Yes, but we don't have a research room to begin with. And
Yeah,
we don't
so
have the collection in one place, there's another thing. So, I mean, until we get to the point where we can actually think practically about the requirements and, you know, what we can provide for researchers, we have to think about where our collection is. What is our collection? And do we have space for researchers? And do we have volunteers? Because someone has to stay with the researchers in the room and make sure nothing is taken away, there are no marks left with no pens, pencils, etc., etc. So, or some fragile materials should be only handled in gloves, and you know, all the things. So somebody has to stay in the room. Who's going to be that person? And when and how? So these are all practical questions, but we're not there yet. I'm afraid.
So to close off this item, you were talking about developing a plan, which I think you're going to do. So is that something that maybe we can bring to the next meeting to talk about in more practical details in terms of how we move from where we are today to where we need to get to? Well, you've got some illustrations of opinions, but they won't really help you complete the task. Is that okay?
Yes, but we've not finished with archive years,
On the
unfortunately.
notes. Yeah,
That's
notes,
a very
yes, right, we've got
important
a couple of
point, and I
final
invite
Shall I
Councillor
just
Martin.
sort of launch in here?
Yes, please.
So we spoke, Natasha and I spoke about about modes, about getting stuff online as the end result.
Modes is not online though. We need
Sorry,
to clarify what that
I'll
is.
start. So at the moment, there are a number of spreadsheets being used. So one of the, I'll call them archivists, but one of those people who are looking at an object, typing in the information, moving on to the next one, is placing it in a spreadsheet. There are a number of people doing this, so let's say 2 or 3, I think you've done some as well.
Yeah.
I saw your name listed on the
Yeah,
spreadsheet. So you have a number of spreadsheets which are then on a regular basis or an irregular basis combined into a master spreadsheet. At the moment, I mean, what very kindly Natasha lent me the data to look at, to see what actually was being done. I combined it into one super spreadsheet. Difficult because I had to go through 29,000 records, sorting out, because if you've got columns and your column with a description is in column E, and then on another spreadsheet it's in column D, and then column G on another one, you've got to combine them all. Done all that, I could do it again, and I would say, going through this process, it would be done again. But fundamentally, we end up with a spreadsheet, which potentially you could have one spreadsheet with many people accessing it, adding to it, but it is still a spreadsheet. It needs to be more database, or looking like a database. Modes. So what we then do with this spreadsheet, we can upload it to Modes. Modes is a bought-in set of software.
So this is a collections management system which follows Spectrum procedures, which are required for accreditation. This is a museum standard.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So I have to clarify this moment. So collections management system is not online catalogue.
No.
Yeah. We separate the two. Yeah. It might not be clear.
Yeah.
So online catalog is something different, and there are different tools and software for that purpose. And I believe we need to think about this because it was not planned before. Like we need to think that about what we use in order to create online catalog. But Modes is something for our records to basically make sure that we track all the objects, where they are, where they live, how to access them, etc., etc. So it has a number of fields, but it is ultimately a big spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
That exists.
It's overblown. I think it's you have a master list, and they call it the master list. You have many other lists associated with that, so that, as Natasha said, you can manage the item goes somewhere else. So you on the master list you have all the actual items. From our spreadsheets, we can upload into Modes. So we have all our spreadsheets on Modes. We then have to identify the nature of where these come from for another listing, which integrates. You must have come across the term relational database, where the major list has lots of things relating to it. These things that relate to it might be a list of people that donate, places that the item is loaned to, rooms that it exists in. So you come to put in an individual item, you have to relate it to all of these. It is a nightmare, a potential nightmare, which can take minutes per item. 29,000 records, 5 minutes per record. It's not, you can't do it. There are other ways of doing it. Plus, Modes cannot be used online. It's a dead end.
It is something to be used internally.
Yeah.
Internally, and it mostly is for for accreditation, for visibility, of what we have and where objects are and who accesses them, when, etc., etc. But the thing is that Modes had been chosen many years ago, but not even by my predecessor, by the predecessor of my predecessor.
Yeah.
So
it hasn't changed.
It hasn't changed since then, but it still is one of the most frequently used collections management system for museums in the UK. But the problem is that it's quite a complex. It covers different possible organizations and their standards, and it could be like the British Museum or Sandwich Guildhall Museum, which are different organizations. So it's quite comprehensive. It's large, and I'm not sure it helps us to understand our collections.
I don't think, because it's the data that's
them.
in there. For example, you've got the description, but it doesn't necessarily have a date or a year or a decade, a century that it's associated with. It's it's the information going in, a description of a portrait, for example. And it could be anybody, so it doesn't really help anybody.
Some of the records do have different information, but it's inconsistent because I think different people were creating the descriptions, and then people have different opinions of what is important about a particular object or a document. So I mean, I'm not saying that some of them are bad or good, but they're just different.
I'm picking ones that I've
It's important to have consistency when we think about the collections management system, right? And also we should be able to use it.
So if John wants to comment on it, if the strategy is to have an accessible database, online question mark,
it's a different one.
It's a different one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and the suggestion that there's hundreds of people who contact the History Society to ask questions about archives. If there's an online database available, that might well take away a number of those queries in terms of what people might be looking for. But
Yes, please.
that's
Well,
just important.
at the moment we're subscribed to modes, we're paying them an annual fee, which is about £280, something like this, which is not too much. But still, it is something for us. We've been paying for it for a number of years now, and I do know, after researching all the emails, that when the predecessor of my predecessor was with us, she worked quite extensively. There was training initially provided. Training is now not free. We have to pay to get any person working with modes trained to use it. To know the format, how to add data to the collections management system, not just to the spreadsheet. And it might not be that complicated, but it's not easy either. So what we actually end up with is, with the collections management system, that can only be managed by a manager who spends some time researching how to use it. And then I cannot really pass this knowledge without the help of modes as an organization that provides the training, not for free. It's outside our subscription fee. And do we still want it? Because the data that is still there was partially added by predecessor of my predecessor, and we're not quite sure at this stage, because the passwords were not provided for me, unfortunately, for this, that my predecessor has added the current master list onto modes, and it's something that needs to be looked at. Yes.
Okay, we do need to move on. So is it going to change?
No, very briefly, I just, because I'm an IT manager and Simon's got a lot of school, we really should be undertaking a feasibility report on the current system, because we don't want to waste a lot of time. It's what's called is migration of data, what Simon's talking about, and we should, and I'm sure the chair will back this up as well, instead of wasting a lot more money on modes, which was brought in a couple of years ago, we should do a feasibility report on what is the best option, because as the chair quite rightly said, we need that option for the online presence, and that should be a part of the feasibility, and that's all I'm going to say.
If I can just add to that, if you're doing a feasibility report and looking at these things, this sounds to me like a job for AI. It's not something for us to be looking at manually. I think an AI solution, if it doesn't already exist, will probably be available very, very soon.
Well, it's important to remember about accreditation. Not every single software, especially AI, is approved for the accreditation. So they have to follow the spectrum procedures, and many of them don't, unfortunately. Especially the ones that have, the open access. They have great option to put the information online, etc. Unfortunately, so it might need to be modes still, but we need to double it, to have modes for our records, and to make sure we're updated with information. So there is progress for accreditation purposes, and we learn how to use it. But we will have an online catalogue or something as a second thing where we back up the data. Am I right?
What I would suggest, without going into, and I think you're quite right, it needs to be a very, very small project looking at the ideal way forward, but in the meantime, we carry on with the spreadsheets because they're easy to update and load. We aim to get them on modes, so we are complying with accreditation, and we can continue using those because it is just literally a case of, to be quite honest, pressing a button to upload. There's a bit more to it, but and while that is going on, we are accumulating the data in a consistent way. We can then look on how we can then transfer that data again into a third item, which can then be online, possibly with images.
But I think we all agree that online is the way forward. Yeah, we have to create an online catalogue that will be visible to not just for us, but others.
Okay, we'll finish that one there because I'm just mindful of time. So community engagement. So this is without attachment, I believe. I can't find one, but so ideas for further or future community engagement. Yes. So I think we've probably all got ideas. Depends whether you want them or if you've got the ideas and you want to discuss them.
Engagement.
Yes, yes. That's the next item.
I mean, it all says a community. I mean, I think I've said it all in my report about the community engagement. I've tried to cover it.
Yeah.
So,
yes, you have.
yeah, I mean, I personally think, as I said already, that it's important not to overlook this aspect of the museum operation. We have to think about the community engagement. It's very important. Without it, the museum doesn't exist. It's just a question of my time.
Yes.
So if I, start thinking about modes and attic, handicraft, and potential online catalogue, well, it's a separate job, right? So I still have to speak to volunteers, to hire volunteers, to train volunteers. I have to make sure everything works in the museum. There are clips, to update the clips, putting in new footage, possibly of Sandwich in the 20s, 30s, 50s, 60s on the screens. That requires time. I have to cut clips, edit them, and put them. So sometimes it can take half my day.
Yeah.
But how do I manage to everything?
And that's a
It's
very
support.
good point. It's a very good point.
What is that? And we have other conservation, Roman Ball, Markencraft. We need,
And there might be ways, for example, that you look at, once you get to that state that's more steady, is you said more volunteers are coming forward, which is great. I don't know what that means in terms of numbers, but you can be very bespoke in terms of volunteers. So you might ask for a volunteer to do storytelling, and that way you can then engage the school. You can have storytelling once a month on a Saturday morning or something in the museum, and that'll attract in a particular group of individuals. And History Society have people with knowledge about the history, so they can come in and storytell. So there are ways in which it can be more interactive and more inclusive and more than just looking at items behind.
It's a great idea with storytelling.
Yeah.
It's the same that what they do in
This
the
worked really well on Spellbound.
Yeah.
Really well.
Spellbound, medieval centre,
Yes,
the
of course.
library,
Yes.
all those
Yeah, the
like
library
we
as
have
well.
a lot of potential collaborators.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
And I think it's very important for a town like Sandwich to maintain those collaborations.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, I think we've done community engagement to death. The next item actually addresses what you've just said, which is determining the priorities for the museum manager, taking into account time and budgetary resources. So if the chair was mindful, we could move on to that, and that would determine where community engagement comes.
So I have got some other ideas as well. Community engagement, so before we do rush off. So I did mention about the schools as well, so there could be ways in which you could actually do some form of nominating individuals who have particularly got an interest in history, and they become a pioneer within the museum, and they become a link. So they could actually, it could be part of an implied apprenticeship around history. So there were multiple things, and I'll send you some of the ideas that I've gleaned. I think community engagement is important, which is, whilst it's secondary to get more money in through tourism, etc., it's a very important part in terms of value.
To get volunteers, because for instance A-level students could come and volunteer and help us.
And it might just be a 6-month stint or a 3-month, different, carve it differently, which might mean you get, rather than volunteers typically are ones that come for years.
Work has been done in that direction, by the predecessors as well, because we had a few volunteers who were, A-level students, not
Yeah.
necessarily for Sandwich, but for Canterbury, but still.
Yes, but
Yeah,
we've
but
got
obviously
over
we have to,
how
like,
many 2,000 students in the town.
Yeah.
Over 2,000, yeah. that's
We
right.
have to like think about it in terms of like.
It's great they're coming from Canterbury, but what about
Yeah.
our
Well,
locals?
you're talking about the University of Canterbury, at Christchurch.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I think they do teacher training. Could some of those prospective teachers sort of come in and learn a bit, would help you
Mm.
in part of their,
Yes,
No.
well, we need to think about the ways how to engage
Yeah,
with
the-
them and
the culture,
advertise it
yeah.
and like basically make it clear that they will benefit from helping us.
yeah.
Okay, we've got
Yeah.
just priorities. So I think you've heard quite a few priorities. The risk is capacity,
Yes,
and
exactly.
everything's a priority for somebody.
At the moment, I just, I just see so many things
Yes.
that I need to do.
Yeah.
How do I do it? And I obviously, have to address lots of issues, but we build priorities for this year, for instance, or like the next months. So what do you want me to do until the end of this year, for instance, till Christmas?
Yeah.
What are the priorities? For instance, like starting a new exhibition would, eat up my resources, and then we're just
Yeah.
doing this. Now we have a new arrangement in the attic. We're ready to start working in the attic.
Yeah.
So that is also potentially something, the direction to take. Or we think about enriching display with family-friendly content, which is a quick improvement that can be achieved this year, but it's just I need to sacrifice other tasks in order to complete this task. So
Could more stuff, I mean, to me, a lot of them cabinets look half full. Could we put more stuff on display in the museum?
put more stuff on display in the museum.
Yeah, there's past mayor's bags and there's, different
Yeah, I
things.
mean, it sounds great in
Like the
theory,
hot mash,
but
it's in there, and the bagel stuff.
in practice, we need to, it's not that we just bring a box of things and just
No.
put it in the cabinet. We need to plan, to think, label, etc.
Yes.
So how do they complement the
Yes.
existing display, or do we get rid of the strip, the cabinets of the content and fill them with new content and use the budget to create panels? Each panel costs a lot of money, so replacing the museum panels with information would, eliminate our budget completely for, So this is not, it's not as easy as it sounds, but I agree with you. We have many amazing objects that need to be made visible and added to the display in the future, but not right now.
No.
We're talking about right now, more or less. Yeah.
Yes, John.
Can I perhaps just ask, because I know you'll put this out to the room, but what's the best way forward? Is it really that you want our museum manager to come forward with proposals for what she thinks is something that's manageable, that is a way forward, that she thinks would be the best plan, and then she sits with me and we look at what the cost of that might be to present that, and then that is brought forward as being the plan for this year? Or should it be where everyone bombards with their ideas and their personal view of it? Should we perhaps be led by her eyes and what she's seen to start with, and then putting that forward at the next meeting or at a future meeting as being what can be done this year, what it might cost, and that being, can we have some more money for it? Whatever those questions might be, but it comes from you, from what you've seen that we've got here at the moment, as to what can be the easy wins that are picking up on the things that people have said, such as community engagement, such as visitor-led ideas and things like, such as linking up in schools to see what can be done for what you think can be managed, because you're probably the only person that can identify what realistically can be managed with your time, because you're only really starting to do it now. I think that the whole of the archive thing is probably a curveball at the moment that is taking you away from what you want to do initially, which is creating that
Then
experience.
it's still, but I cannot neglect it because it's very important.
It's got to be done, I realise that. and
When I
you've got
was
to get it.
interviewed for my position, I've been told that this is urgent. We need to sort out the attic. As an archivist, I really do want to do something about the archive because it's impossible. I also get research requests in my inbox all the time. People come up with questions and, but I cannot answer the questions.
Sorry, can I just say, I think the proposal from the RFO is absolutely spot on, that if you come with a plan, if you can incorporate options, because as you work through a plan, you'll say 20% of my time is supervising staff, and at the end of the day it will only leave a small amount of time, and for that you can then say, well, I can either do this or that, but I have to do all of these other things.
Yeah.
So basically, you don't have answers. You want me to create my
Yeah.
own work.
So I think two people have already said what I was going to say, but so I won't labour it at all. But what I will say is, what would be, so you've got ideas.
Yes.
I think any of the members should send you their ideas, but not as priorities for you to then address. And I think you look at the landscape, which you've got a landscape, albeit maybe slightly cloudy landscape, and I would prefer you, between now and August, the next meeting, to soak in what you've heard and then come up with some proposals, hopefully articulated by John in terms of cost, capacity, and quick wins with the options that Councillor Green mentioned.
One of the frustrations for you at the moment is the budget. What are those numbers for?
Yeah.
And you don't know that, and we need to, if we can reassign that to what we can do, and you can just perhaps do your deliverables.
Frustration for me is that there are a few things that I haven't started, but my prisoner has started, like the external projects, for instance. I mean, they take a lot of my time at the moment, you know, the volunteer Istanbul project, and the output is not going to be as amazing, and the contribution to the actual museum and art is not that grand from them. So this is a bit of a problem, but we committed to finish those two projects, and we have to do it. So one of them finishes in late autumn, another one next year. So it's quite a long period of time. So at least 20% of my time will be dedicated to the projects in one way or another.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, it's 3 months. You talk about schools, you talk about getting stuff on the curriculum.
Yeah.
So really, you need stuff
to create something else to use next.
Yeah, otherwise you're going to wait another year, aren't you?
Yeah. It's too late already for the year that starts in September.
So it's just like talking about a year ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So for the time being, we continue with group visits, with school visits as much as we can. But I do think that it's important to spend some money on, creating the child-friendly display and QR codes, things that are not that expensive, but then they will improve it dramatically.
And I think we would, I hope, all agree with what you've said. This is about doing it sensibly, doing it in a realistic way, and I think you've got enough to look at priorities and come to the next meeting, which I think then means the next item about budget restatement. I think you've got a clear view. I appreciate. I hope that's what I'm hearing, is that go away, engage with John about what's available and how to restate it. So your thing was consider a review of allocation of costs. I think you've got support to do that. I don't think your hands can be tied on what you've inherited that in some respects isn't your vision. It has to be your vision. It can't be your predecessor's vision. So I think I would support that, and I hope everybody else would.
Isn't there some money left in that? Do you remember we bought the Roman bowl?
Yeah, the
Is there any money left in that? We can incorporate that.
I have very.
There is a residual amount that's left that is assigned to just that.
Yes.
That's the point. It is actually
for a
earmarked for it.
Yeah, we don't need as much money.
No.
We just
No,
need
so
related
spend it,
money, and we need
carrying it
our
over
big
all the time.
expense is the donation. The point of the donation button, which is only £400 or £500. But then it will earn this money back very, very quickly.
And that's good, and I think that comes as part of that proposal, because I think it sounds exactly what we need to do. Just maybe give enough evidence support to the sense that you get all your money back and more. It needs to be a bit more quantified. So maybe from St Clement's is a really good example to see, what was the marginal difference, and again, supporting that. Okay. Have we covered enough for you?
I think so, yes. Well, the last thing I want to say that, although I do understand the pressure with the archive, the attic and all these things, and I'm doing my best, please, it's a message for everybody, bear with me. I know there's a lot of frustration in the town, everybody wants to access the archive. It's not gonna happen immediately. It's a very complex task, but the good news, we are working on creating a plan, and it's gonna happen after we sort out 5 other issues, but we are doing
I just want to add a slight complication into this, is that obviously protecting the collection is vital. And one of the things that we've got to look at next year is making sure that we're fully insured for it.
Yes.
And that can only happen by knowing what we have. So we've got a long, I know we've got a long way to go there,
It's a
but
long-standing issue,
yeah.
yeah.
it's, but the insurance company are asking for that, they're asking for access to see the individual things. And to come out and to
And then
assess
let's
it.
not forget that in 2 years we will have re-accreditation.
Do we collectively accept those reports?
Well, the last two,
Yeah.
we've got supporting voting. So I'd like to, let's just collect that. I would propose that we accept the direction that we've articulated. If somebody, so in terms, yes, so in terms of, yes, look at the budget restating it. Yes, look at the priorities from your perspective, present those to the next meeting. Community engagement, if anyone's got any ideas, share them, and you'll feed that into your feasible, deliverable outputs over the next year. Okay?
Second that.
So, you vote on that?
We're unanimous, isn't it?
So, yeah, good. Thank you very much. Next meeting, 3rd of August.
Is it,
6:30.
it's not 1930?
No, it should be at 6:30.
I was going to say that.
That's wrong. 6:30 it should be.
June 26th.
Yeah. Oh, wow, no, can somebody just double check, make sure it doesn't follow another meeting?
Oh, hang on.
Yeah, sorry, there's jumping
What's the
straight
date?
in and make Mike.
It's
Wallace.
good.
3rd of August.
3rd of August. So,
It's going to be planning. Is
it could be,
No, it's heritage and landscape was meant to be after planning.
that the first? Oh no, I was thinking the 3rd of August
somebody
as
looking on the
opposed to.
website.
Well, because heritage and landscape is not usually on a Monday.
No,
They're
No, it's
usually
not.
Wednesday.
no. Planning's on
Okay,
Monday.
so let people who are watching get disposed of every time. I'm sure there's not too many watching.
I've got a call coming in from Sydney in a minute.
Meetings, your council,
Long
Ian's calendar.
On distance over Zoom. Yeah.
August. Right, here we are. Change date. August 3rd. Yes, so it is 7:30.
Okay.
Following planning. Okay, 3rd of August. Thank you, Councillor Fortescue. Meeting closed.